Does anyone read the novels of J.D. Salinger anymore? I remember vividly reading Catcher in the Rye when I was, I don't know, sometime between the ninth and the 11th grade, and being quite caught up with Holden Caulfield. I'm not quite sure why. I keep thinking I'm going to reread it. I had bought it from one of those little spinner racks at the drugstore, I think 35 cents, although it may have been 50. And I found it such a fascinating book that I stayed up until I finished it, and then I went bravely to an all-night coffee shop and had a cup of coffee and felt rebellious. Then I, of course, had to buy more, and I first read, I think, Franny and Zooey, which that was more or less my introduction to the Jesus Prayer and also to the Glass family. I liked the Glass family. They were clever children who got rewarded for being clever, and I was a clever child who got beat up at school for being clever. And I started dressing like J.D. Salinger in tweeds and the like. Also, I adopted one of the practices of Seymour. Seymour was the oldest of the Glass children. I named a cat Seymour once in his honor. And he was kind of the stand-in for Salinger. And he had on the back of his door a big piece of poster board on which he wrote witty and wise sayings. And I did that at Memphis State University when I was a freshman, and the dean of students came and made me take it down. Now, the things that Seymour had on his door were not unlike the sort of sophomore expoundings that the Pope recently said in Singapore. Franny and Zooey were first published as short stories in the New Yorker. I wanted to go to New York, of course, when I grew up, when I was reading these stories. In the first of them, Franny discovers, Franny is the youngest of the Glass children and the only girl, I think, discovers the way of the Pilgrim and decides that everything she has been doing is meaningless and she isn't going to go to the big game, and she thinks her boyfriend's thesis is stupid, and she goes home to Mama's and lies down on the couch and kind of enters a sort of a glazed nirvana, near nirvana, with half a tuna sandwich in her pocket, and this upsets her mom, Bessie Glass, who is the kind of perfect New York. I'd remembered her being Jewish, but she's actually Roman Catholic. But, it's the Upper East Side, so what can I say? Then in the second story, Zooey, Bessie violates Zooey's bath. Zooey is sitting in the bathtub reading a manuscript for a play he doesn't think he wants to star in, and smoking a cigar. I would for a while smoke cigars in the bathtub after reading that, I confess. And Bessie tries to convince Zooey to help his sister, and Zooey goes upstairs and calls Franny and pretends to be Seymour and reads all the nonsense on the wall. Now, as I say, I read The Way of the Pilgrim, and I don't think I set out to discover the world with just the Jesus Prayer and the book. But I have had friends who took it quite seriously in one way or another, and also who took up the Jesus Prayer, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of the living God, have mercy on me, a sinner, as a serious part of their prayer life. I must honestly say I have not always been impressed with the results of that practice. I had one friend who is a priest, priestess, whatever they call them in the Episcopal Church. He used to like to come over and pray together, and she was a big fan of breath prayer and the like for a while, but she was always chasing after some new wonderful practice. I don't think she is an active priestess anymore. And then I had someone who was pretty good friends with, an Episcopal priest, and then back in the old country, and I wandered back in the old country and discovered he had become Orthodox, and I found the church that he was the priest of open and went in and was looking around. He came in and discovered I wasn't a burglar, and we had a good old time catching up, and I talked about my discovery of the Western Rite, and then a few years later I went back with a young friend who was a bona fide Greek Orthodox, and I had been attending an Orthodox church, and they felt my typically American mongrelly credentials were okay. I was communion. They didn't always have me stand in the presbytery, but that was okay. But my newly Orthodox friend, who was moving the beads the whole time the knots the whole time he was talking to us, not only didn't commune us, he wanted us to go outside at the doors. I'm sure there are some people who have better experiences with the Jesus prayer than that. And in fact, I can think of a few. But it does seem that the advice of monks on the holy mountain, where supposedly the way the pilgrim would have turned up, and others, that one should use the Jesus prayer with the guide of someone who knows what he's doing, is correct. And also that perhaps sometimes just because someone says he knows what he's doing doesn't mean that he really knows what he's doing. What about pilgrimage? I have been reading a really wonderful book about pilgrimage to the shrine of Our Lady of Walsingham, and I have become quite intrigued by Our Lady of Walsingham. I plan to make a video in mid-October about her. And I was a little bit intrigued by the coincidence as this copy of The Way of the Pilgrim kind of plopped down in front of me without my looking for it a couple of days ago. Now, I have never made a serious pilgrimage to an officially holy site, although I did used to spend a lot of time hanging out in the lovely little garden beside St. Nicholas Russian Orthodox Church in Seattle, because that's where one of my favorite saints, St. John, the wonder worker of Shanghai and San Francisco, used to hang out. I am myself more likely to make a pilgrimage to a spring. I think I've mentioned several times that the little chapel I had in Eureka Springs, where there are lots of springs, was dedicated to Our Lady of the Life-Giving Spring, or to rivers. One of my favorites being the Spring River, or even occasionally to creeks, or most especially, in my case, to what I call the Sacred White River, which I have traversed from its beginning to its end. But what about the holy mountain, Mount Athos, which many say is even more sacred than Bessie Glass's sofa? I suppose my best introduction to Mount Athos was from reading William Dalrymple's book, From the Holy Mountain. But in many ways, it was Dalrymple's discussion of John Moskos's The Spiritual Meadow, which made the biggest impression on me. Dalrymple retraced as much as he could the route that John Moskos, a 6th century monk, had taken when he was visiting all the various skeets and monasteries in the desert around Mount Sinai. And it was my introduction to how seriously these guys had taken the effort to escape the just insanities of the world. And that is an escape that I find very attractive. Now, I don't think that I'll ever go to Mount Athos, but from my point of view, the Boston Mountains of northwest Arkansas seem just about as sacred a place as any. And from time to time, I have gone back there and lived a simple life, and then I get pulled back into the world. Now, the attraction to do this sort of thing again is not that I feel any more holy than anyone else, but that I don't feel any more holy than anyone else. I am so easily sucked into the insanities of the world that I feel like I need a place with fewer distractions. Ziggy, is the world too much with me?
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
This has been a rather embarrassingly self-indulgent video in one way, but I suspect that I'm not the only one who, from time to time, feels like Franny Zooey and wishes it would be possible to get back to If not the garden, then the sofa of Bessie Glass's well-ordered living room. So I'm curious whether any of you feel this way, and how you manage to deal with the feelings, and what hope you have for escaping the madness of the world. I can think of no better way to end this video than with one of the prayers of the Benedictine itinerary, as it is translated in the Anglican office book. O God, who didst call thy servant Abraham out of Ur of the Chaldees, and didst keep him from evil through all the ways of his pilgrimage, we beseech thee that it may please thee to keep us thy servants. Be thou unto us, O Lord, a help when we go forward, a comfort by the way, a shadow from the heat, a covering from the rain and the cold, a chariot in weariness, a refuge in trouble, a staff in slippery paths, a haven in the shipwreck. Do thou lead us that we may haply come thither where we would be, and thereafter return again, safely into our own home.